When you're suffering from creative block, this is the sort of thing I go to. A freestyle pendant with copper wire, which is soft and easy to mold. And I'm going to show you here how it comes out differently every single time. You can put it over a stone, a gemstone. You can glue a stone on it to give it some color. You can just leave it, without anything on, or you can patinate it. So I've got some, it's actually 1.25, so it's thick copper because I wanted to show you, close up how you can just scribble with this. So I start off by cutting a nice long length, a sort of arm's length, and then I find the center, and using my round nose pliers, I always begin with the top bail. So this is going to be the suspension loop, and I fold it around a bit like the head of a safety pin, so it's doubled. So that's going to be the top of my pendant, and I've got these two wires to work with. So cross them over where the double loop is, and that way you have secured the top of your pendant. Now you've got two wires to go and scribble with and play with. So I'm just going to start by making a loop, because this is quite thick wire. I'm looping it around my round nose pliers, and then I'm just going to go off piste basically and see where the wire wants to go. You've really, there's no rules and regulations. You can see I'm using a bail making mandrel now just to make a bigger loop on the other side, because I want the wires obviously to carry on coming down from that top loop. So I'm going to curl it around, and then try and hook it as often as you can on the second wire. So one wire, should be hooked on the second one from time to time, so that it's fused together, so that it's not two separate wires just sitting on top of each other. So work from one side, and then once you've done a few loops, and of course loops are easier than anything angled, you want it to be free flowing. And once you've done a few loops, just hammer the very, very edges of those loops, and this will stabilize, flatten and work harden and stabilize that shape. So don't hammer any wires that are, one is over the other or one is, otherwise you'll weaken them. Just the edges, just the outer edges of anything you can, and you'll see how that flattens and spreads and also toughens up the wire, so it makes it stay and it can't misshape anymore. So I'm just going to carry on, just letting my intuition, or rather the wire, tell me what to do, how it feels it wants to curl. And now that I'm getting to sort of near the end of this wire, I'm going to feed it through a portion of the scribble or curly whirliness, so that it is connected, so it's not just going to sit loose and then bring the very end. I don't want a spiky end anywhere, so I think I'll just hook it, just make a little hook there so that there's no spiky end. So that's one side done, and I'm just going to give that a good old flattening and spreading. You're literally just spreading out the edges, and you're not hammering one wire on top of the other. It's just the edges to make it nice and solid, and also it looks nice. It looks fixed, and it looks as if it's meant to be that shape. It gives it a sort of finale. And now to finish off, so I will feed it through somewhere if I can find a gap. I don't want to force the wire anywhere it doesn't want to go, so always think it's got to look like it's free flowing. You just, let it look as if it's sort of tumbling around and wanting to go in that direction. And post it through as many gaps as you can, so that it is connected and the whole thing is going to hold and fuse together. Of course, if you have cut too much wire and you feel it's getting a bit too fussy, then you know, you don't have to use all the wire. I'm just going to go for broke now and just hammer these edges because that's going to be near the base now. And I think with this last bit, I've got just enough to make a spiral with that end. So I'm just going to post it through, and that will be perfect for the sort of the end of my chaos, the end of the scribble. So you can use mandrels, you can use shaping tools, you can use a pen or something to wrap around. And there with that last bit, I'm going to create a spiral. I usually do with anything that I can find left over. And that can sort of just wedge its way underneath the last loop on the other side and hook in so that it's firmly connected. So always think of the ends. Always think that you mustn't have any raw ends just sitting out. And then just go around the pendant, and again, any bits on the outer perimeter of your pendant, just stroke, hammer to spread, flatten, and work harden. And it becomes a nice solid piece. And then you can use your dapping head to texture any of these extremities where the wire is spread and flattened. You can give it a texture which will add a little bit more interest to the pendant. And you can see it really is chaos. It's a good one if you're really stuck with, I don't know what to make next, but I want to make something. And it's sort of like an art therapy, really. It gives you that therapeutic sort of feel of doing something, making something, and you know, every time you make it, it will be unique. Now I'm just turning round those top two suspension loops that I made right in the beginning because I want them to sit at a right angle to my pendant. Now I don't feel that's completely finished yet because I feel it's all a bit one-dimensional. It's quite flat. It's so I'm just going to open up the top there, just spread those out a little bit because that's where I'm going to put my cord or my chain. It just helps make it look a little bit more interesting. And now you can think about perhaps putting some colour in it. I've got some liver of sulphur, which is a way of blackening silver, or you can use it on copper. So I've got copper, so it's pretty smelly. So I'm just going to put, this is a gel version of it, and normally I would mix it with water, but as I'm doing this as a quick video to inspire you, I'm going to put it directly into my little pot. Oh, didn't expect my paintbrush. It is an old one, but so I'm painting it straight on. Normally I would sort of dilute it a tiny bit with water, and I'm just going to paint it all over, and it will blacken. You'll see it blacken as I'm holding it, the surface of the metal. Boy, does it smell. It's got that smell, well, you know the word sulfur, of eggs, boiled eggs, you know, rotten eggs. It's really pretty potent. And you can see now how it's blackening up the surface, but it can't get to the pieces where it's under, you know, under the coils. So it'll give it more of a three-dimensional look by doing this. So I'm just going to whiz it through. Normally I would put the liver of sulphur on and then I would walk away, leave it completely dry, and then come back to it to give it a sanding down. But as I'm doing this as a video that is going to be, I'm not going to stop the video, I'm just going to go straight on to the next bit as a demonstration. So you can see the blackness is there. Then I'll get some wire wool or a sanding block or sandpaper, fine sanding paper, and I'm just going to gently, gently rub some of that black off, and it will, the rest of it will sit in the recesses and will give it a little bit more interest. So you can see it stays in some of those hammered areas, and it stays in places that I, you know, to give it more interest. And you can see the curves a little bit more. You can see it's got more depth to it. So if you were doing this at home, let the liver of sulphur stay on longer and completely dry, and then do this. Don't work so quickly as I am. But I'm just going with some fine wire wool, rubbing it all over the front surface of my piece, and just highlighting the edges and certain areas to get those lovely flowing lines of the metal showing more, and it just gives it more distinction. And then if you've got a polishing cloth or you've got a polishing motor, you can polish up those edges, give it a little bit more sparkle, get a little bit more interest, so you've got different surfaces. So give it a good old rub with a polishing cloth, and that will pick up a lot of the just detail, and especially the texture detail. And there you can see how it does set it off a lot more than just leaving it the same. Now this one I've used a patination colour. You could see the green on there. I've just sort of like put a bit of green patination. It gives it an old look, and I've hung a crystal from it, so you can see how you could hang something from it if you've got a crystal to add at the end. And for the top you can see how you would hang it there. And I can wire on some little beads into this piece if I wanted to. Here's some more samples that I made. Now this one, which I made earlier, I'm going to show you how I could attach it to the front of, this is a beautiful piece of sodalite that I had, a sodalite gemstone. And it has a drilled hole. So you could see how you could add this to the front of a beautiful cabochon, or here what I'm doing is just wrapping and securing it around that top that we made, the suspension link, which will now be the suspension link of my sodalite stone. So I could have just wrapped it and cut off the end, but you know me now, I love making spirals. So I'm just adding a little bit more detail to the top front of my piece by adding that little spiral there. And then to connect it to the front of the stone so it doesn't move around, I'm just going to cut it off the spool there, and I can link it in, find a place at the base of my pendant and hook it into that part. Actually, that bit is if I put it there, that is pretty good, but it's actually a little bit sideways, so I'm going to put it in the next loop along so that it sits much straighter. That's better. So I'm just adding a little, you can either put a loop, I'm able to put it through, and I'm just going to push it back in the hole because the hole was drilled large enough for it to sit there. And you can see how that now becomes a very interesting pendant. You can wear it both sides with the sodalite on one side and that Chaos copper piece on the front. And this one I have glued a little cabochon, a resin cabochon. It's turquoise, and it also adds a bit of interest. So enjoy making these pieces. You can see you can wire little crystals on, and there's so many different variations you can do to make it look so interesting and make it your own. Thank you for watching.